and thanks to the NBCO for having us here today, so we feel very welcome. So I'm going to go through a few things about Safe Electric and additions to existing installations. So I'm going to get cracking here. So we've already introduced ourselves, so Neale Dalton and John Cotter. This is what we're going to cover today on the agenda. I'm not going to read that all out, it'll be a bit of a mouthful. So this is the introduction. So what should you expect from a registered electrical contractor when you're getting additional works done to an existing installation? With the new green era, we're noticing a lot of extra electrical work, PV systems, EV systems, heat pumps, home extensions. So they all have a serious impact on the electrical system, the existing electrical system. A lot extra current could be flowing. The system may not be able to cater well for these extra loads. So John's going to touch a bit more on that later on in the presentation. Okay. So what is Safe Electric? Who are Safe Electric? Well, Safe Electric, we're the body responsible for overseeing the activities of electrical contractors in the Republic of Ireland. We're primarily focused on IS 10101, which is our wiring rules. Safe Electric, we maintain a register of all electrical contractors. So on our website, we have a register of registered electrical contractors. This is a list that you can check. You can go on to safeelectric.ie and you can check if you're using a registered electrical contractor. You can put their name, their registration number in, and then you can see, are they actually registered with us? And when they're registered with us, that proves that they have the right insurance and other requirements to be part of our scheme. So regulation through certification. So this comes from the criteria document. The criteria document is written by the CRU, the Commission of Regulation of Utilities. At the time they were called the CER, and this is the legislation behind the whole regulatory scheme of Safe Electric. So certification is fundamental to the effective operation of the regulatory system, insofar as it is the thread that links the work of the REC on the ground to the overall regulatory objective and certifies that the controlled work has been carried out in accordance with the technical rules. So certification is probably one of the most important parts of our scheme. When you have a Safe Electric cert, it means that your installation is compliant with the wiring rules and tests have been carried out in accordance with part 6 of those rules. So there's a number of tests that have to be carried out to ensure the safety of the installation. We have a team of certification team in Safe Electric that consists of 3 full-time people. So their job is they check every certificate that comes in to Safe Electric. Each month we get around 4,000 to 5,000 Cert 1s and Cert 2s. Cert 1s and Cert 2s are connections to the grid. So there's an awful lot of certs that we get. At this moment in time, we're noticing there's actually more this year than there was last year. We seem to be up by around 1,000 a month this year. So when they're validating certificates, they check that at the time the installation was constructed and installed, that it was actually insured, okay? They're checking that the qualified certifier, who is an electrician with extra training, so they have extra training so they can test the installation. They're checking that their qualified certifier is actually still qualified because the qualification lasts for 5 years at a time. And every 5 years it needs to be renewed. They will also check varying test results. So we have them trained to look for what we would see might be obvious mistakes on the certificate. So they look for the lowest resistance of protective conductor and they look for the highest installation resistance. Now these things are giveaway to inspectors to let us know if the installation actually has been tested in accordance with the wiring rules. We're quite clued in, we can see when someone hasn't in fact tested the installation. If they haven't tested the installation, it will be given to an inspector. We'll either go out and inspect the job or they get a phone call from us and we'll have a serious word with them. So the role of Safe Electric. So regulation and oversight. Safe Electric monitors the activities of electrical contractors to ensure they meet safety standards and comply with national regulations. We have a team of 13 inspectors across Ireland. They all cover strategic parts of the country closer to where they live. We conduct around 4,500 inspections a year over all of Ireland. On our inspections, we have an audit part of the inspection and we have the inspection side of the inspection. The audit side of things is to ensure that they meet the minimum requirements of the scheme. So we're checking, has the qualified certifier the qualification, is it in date? We're checking, do they have a copy of IS 10101, which is the wiring rules? We're checking, have they issued the correct certification for the jobs that they've done over the course of the year? A registered electrical contractor has to issue a certificate for every job that they do. Okay, so if we were out with a registered contractor and we saw one certificate for one 3-bedroom semi, we would actually query with them, what were they doing the rest of the year? There's no way they could run a proper electrical company with that. So they should be issuing Cert 3s, and Cert 3s are for controlled or minor works as well. So we maintain a comprehensive register of qualified and insured electrical contractors. We've covered that. We make sure when you're on the register that you're insured. Audits and inspections. Regular audits and inspections are conducted to verify the contractors are following technical rules and standards. We have disciplinary actions. When necessary, Safe Electric take disciplinary actions against contractors. So a lot of disciplinaries would come from our complaints. If you are using a registered electrical contractor, the role of Safe Electric is to protect the customer. It's not a union, it's not there to protect the registered electrical contractor, it's to protect the customer. If you have an issue with any registered electrical contractor, you can go onto our website and you can fill out the complaint section and you can make a complaint against that contractor. We will investigate every complaint that comes into us. Sometimes they're valid and sometimes they're not valid, but we will look at that and we will conduct the investigation accordingly. From these complaints, we do have disciplinaries. They're not very nice when we have to discipline people because their livelihoods are at risk, but it's their livelihood. It could be someone's life at risk unless we do discipline these contractors. We can as much revoke them from the scheme, or we can make them pay for inspections and increased inspections, so we can put them in a high risk category and they would have to pay for their own inspections. We find that works better than revoking. Revoking people means they just go under the radar. We don't actually get sight of them anymore. So we would say they're probably better off within the scheme so we can actually see and have oversight of what they're actually doing. We offer customer support. We got questions there at lunchtime about customer support. If you have any questions or queries, you're more than welcome to go onto our website. There's a portal there for putting in queries. We also have info@safeelectric.ie, which you can email our team. And we also have technical queries at safeelectric.ie. So we'll be happy to answer any queries that come to us. So this is a timeline of how the regulatory scheme actually got set up. In 1992, a group, RECI, I think everyone thinks that Safe Electric is RECI, but we'll cover that a bit later on. They started the Register of Electrical Contractors of Ireland, and that was self-regulation. They decided to do it themselves. They wanted to be regulated, okay? Then in 1999, the Electrical Act came in from the Commission on Regulation of Utilities. In 2006, the Energy Miscellaneous Act was brought in, and they appointed 2 supervisory bodies. One was RECI and one was the ECSSA. In 2016, there was a bit of a review, and then RECI were given the sole SSB license, which is the Safety Supervisory Body license. There was a problem when we had 2 governing bodies. It meant that it was very hard to regulate the industry. If one was stricter than the other, what tended to happen was if someone had a strict inspection, they may leave the stricter one and go to the easier. So by having one single body, it made the standards actually rise quite significantly. In September 2022, it went out for tender again, and a new company called SGS, well, SGS are around over 100 years. They're an international company with over 100,000 staff. But they took over the SSB in 2023, and this is a 7-year tender that happens every 7 years. And they created a company called Walkmeadow, which looks after Safe Energy Ireland, which looks after the RGI and the Safe Electric scheme. So we have the gas and the electric all in the same building. And then the future, it's going to go up for tender again in 2028. So we're going to get on to John. John's going to take over here now in a second. So what we're here to showcase is adding new electrical work to existing installations. So I think from all the presentations today, I think it's quite similar. The new work has to comply with the current regulations. And the problem is when you're trying to intertwine the current regulations with older installations, what do you do? What do you expect? So John's going to cover a bit of that with you. So we are noticing a lot more, as we touched on, solar PVs and EV systems. EV chargers are probably for us, one of the biggest, probably one of the most frightening devices, because you're sticking on over 30 amps of electricity, and that's sustained load, and it can be on for over 10 hours in a night. That's a considerable amount of electricity to be running while you're asleep in your bed, so it has to be installed correctly, okay? So if anyone has an EV vehicle and you've got an EV charger installed, make sure that you get the certificate. It's key that you get the certificate. The certificate means everything. It means that you have protection from Safe Electric if something was to go wrong, but more so, it means that it's been tested and it is safe to be put into use. All right. So for that, I'm going to hand you over to John. John's going to take over the next few slides. Here, John.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. You've been hearing the word rules a lot. So the two key rules with regards to carrying out additional installations to existing part or chapter 1 of the wiring rules, which is the fundamental principles, which would be the rule 134.1.9. And in the case of an addition or alteration to an existing installation, it shall be determined that the rating condition of existing equipment which will have to carry an additional load is adequate for its altered circumstances. So just what Neale mentioned there about the EV car chargers, making sure that an old existing installation that was done back in the 90s, what we would refer to would be the meter tails, and ensuring that cable can take this additional load. Furthermore, the earthing and bonding arrangements, if necessary for the protective measures applied for the safety and the addition of the alteration shall be adequate. So that's making sure that what that's referring to is earthing and bonding, and the existing installation is the adequate size for adding on these extra loads. The next key rule here is in chapter 6, which is to do with testing and verification. Very similar to the previous rule. It shall be verified that an extension, addition or alteration to an existing installation complies with IS 10101. What that's really saying is the registered electrical contractors he's installed has to comply with current standards every time. And that this does not impair the safety of that installation, and that the safety of the new installation is not impaired by the existing installation. So if I just reverse a small bit back to, again, we'll use the EV car charger. So if I'm installing an EV car charger and my meter tails aren't adequate for that load, now my new installation is going to impair the safety of the existing. So therefore, this really is the two key rules that a registered electrical contractor has to perform or undertake before he carries out any installation. Now, we also have periodic inspection reports. So a periodic inspection report is an outgoing and condition of an existing electrical installation on the day of the inspection was carried out. The reports are based on requirements outlined in the National Wiring Rules for electrical installations, and the reports can be carried out by a safe electric registered contractor. The interval between the reports may be based on the recommendations outlined in the Health and Safety Guides, Notes on Periodic Inspection and Testing of Electrical Installations. This document here, where you see with the pliers, so that's a PDF that you can get on the Health and Safety website. And on that, they give the intervals on where we should be carrying out periodic inspection reports. So for an example, you can see commercial, and if we go over to the third box, it says suggested period between inspection and testing, which would be 5 years for the registered electrical contractor to undertake a periodic inspection report. So reasons why an inspection may be necessary to provide. So again, these are all extracted from the IS 101 document. So the safety of persons and livestock against the effects of electric shock and burns, protection against damage to the property by fire, heat arising from electrical installation defect, Confirmation of correct rating and setting of protective devices required by Part 1, or Part 4.1, sorry. So the protective device, in case you're wondering what we're referring to there, is your fuse or your MCB. Confirmation that the installation is not damaged or deteriorated so as to impair safety. The identification of the installation defects and non-compliances with the requirement of the relevant wiring rules that may give rise to danger. Confirmation of correct rating and setting of protective devices, and confirmation of correct rating and setting of monitoring devices. So the guidance that we give to registered electrical contractors, again, because that's the most continuous question that we do get, I'm going on to site, what do I need to do? So we do provide guidance on our website as well, which is in the technical information part on the website. So RECs working on installations which have not recently had a periodic inspection report shall issue a recommendation that the PIR shall be carried out. It should be noted in the comment box on the certificate that this recommendation has been issued. So again, we're informing the customer that they should go ahead and get this periodic inspection report undertaken. The guidance again for RECs and modification to distribution boards and meter tails and additions. So again, the RECs must assess the entire installation, not just new or upgraded component. So this is very important again. So I keep saying to electrical contractors, leave the tool bag in the van, bring in the test gear, and carry out your assessment of the existing installation first. Extremely important. A completed test record sheet is mandatory for the new works, and also for including the testing of the existing. All results must be transcribed onto the completion certificate for all new works undertaken by the registered electrical contractor. And again, we're just referring to the rule there, 6.4.1.5. Guidance for RECs on the modification, again, in distribution boards, the meter tails and additions. So visual and electrical checks. This is again conscribed from the wiring rules. So visual inspection on the entire installation. Polarity verification of all circuits. This is vital from what we've seen in the past, especially to do with electrical car chargers being installed without undertaking all the previous points that I took out. In certain cases, they reverse polarity. And what I mean by polarity is, you know, you've live and neutral, and we need to have live and neutral in the correct places. But in certain cases where they've undertaken the alteration to meter tails to facilitate an EV car, they might have mixed up live and neutral on the existing. So we need them to check that in all cases. The meter tails must be checked for correct size and suitability. Again, the main protective conductor, which is the neutralizing link, continuation must be verified. So what they're referring to there is the earthing system. In Ireland, our earthing system has to be TNCS on the majority of installations. So we have to confirm that, because again, from historic electrical installations done prior in the 90s, they used to use a TT type earthing system. And the trouble with that is they used to use a 300 milliamp RCD, which hasn't been tested in decades, and they deteriorate. So we instruct registered contractors that they have to change that earthing system to a TNCS earthing system. The next one is the earth conductor to the electrode, continuity confirmed. This is another, I suppose, yeah, the industry would be crying out about this. So the earth conductor is the cable that leaves the distribution board and goes out to the earth rod, which is about 1.2 meters, and it's driven down into the ground. The registered contractors need to access and check this connection. So again, you know, even in new installations or any alterations, the access to this electrode, or the earth spike is what a lot of people would refer to, needs to be accessible. Especially, again, going back to carrying out your periodic inspection report again in time to come. Confirm the equipotential bonding main, supplementary, and local. So that would be your main bonding to either gas, structural steel. Supplementary bonding would be to maybe suspended metal ceilings, and local again would be to do with metal sinks and metal rads that would produce equal potential. Next list, again, we've got tightening terminals to manufacturer specified torque. So when we've got contractors working on the distribution board, again, they're requested to check all the connections on the distribution board, not just their own install. So we insist that they go through all the connections with a torque screwdriver and, again, to manufacturer specification. Confirm fuse carriers are tight and gauge rings are fitted. So that's referring to the old Z-type fuses. Use top rear cable entries and no panel cutouts. So again, what we refer to, which is an IP rating. So there should be no more than 2 millimeters of a gap on a distribution board. So again, if they do cut out these, we have to insist that they replace it. Fit backing plates in all voids. Again, that's referring to the one on the top. Replace and withdraw all faulty devices, such as the DZ3 type fuses. No, that's the old large screw-in type fuse. And unfortunately as well, there was a callback on a Neo-Z type fuse back in 1999. But again, we've given all this information to registered contractors so they're well able to identify these. If they are fitting the car charger, then these would have to be replaced. Ensuring that the RCDs and the RCBOs, so that's referring to the trip switch, making sure that they're all installed where required, and the test times on these RCBOs are all checked and recorded, even on existing ones. So even if they're just putting in their own RCBO for the car charger, we're also asking them, while they're at the distribution board, to carry out tests on the other type RCDs. So then we also conduct a 250 volt installation resistance test. That's so that's live and neutral, and we're testing to earth on that. So what this test does is it tests the integrity of the cables. It also lets us know if there's any existing short circuits. A most common one would be on a lighting circuit, neutral to earth. Your lights will still work, your fuse won't blow, but the problem with that is if your mains neutral drops out, your whole house its return path will go on that little small cable, and eventually that cable will burn out. So again, this is a very important test that we get RECs to undertake. So should any of the above or hazards identified on the substandard, the registered electrical contractor shall either rectify the problem or issue a notice of potential hazard, which is a form, again, that we provide to the contractors. So this potential notice of hazard has to be issued to the customer. It also has to be issued to Safe Electric, and Safe Electric will then issue the customer with a generic letter stating that the registered electrical contractor has identified a defect on your property, and that we strongly recommend that you get a registered electrical contractor to carry out and issue you a certificate for doing so. So if I just reverse again back to just to give you an example. So if we go back to our car charger install, and part of the procedure was for the registered contractor to undertake the testing of the existing RCDs. So he's installed his own RCD, he's tested that, that's functioning fine, he's recorded the test results. He tested the existing RCD for the sockets on the property, and that proves to have failed the test. So if he turns around to Mrs. Murphy and say, I'm obliged to test your existing RCD, unfortunately that has failed the test, and Mrs. Murphy is saying, I only paid you to do the car charger. So the contractor's in a bit of a dilemma here again, isn't he? So what he can do in this situation is he has to view the first rule that I showed you a while ago. Is my install impairing the safety of the existing here? Or is the existing impairing the safety of mine? So technically he's fitted his own protective devices on his circuit. This RCD of the sockets isn't affecting his. So it's not affecting his, and his isn't affecting the existing. So in this case, he can issue a notice of potential hazard to the customer. Now, in most of the cases, Mrs. Murphy is always going to go with the advice from the contractor, and she'll agree to get it changed in that situation. So that's the reason why we've got these notice of potential hazards. Again, we do advise contractors to really not to be issuing these willy-nilly, you know, just to make sure that they are issuing them for an actual potential hazard. On that, so, and again, we'll just come back to the certificates there now. So Neale hit off them there a while ago. So you've got on the very first left-hand side here is cert number 1. So what that certificate gets you is the involvement of the ESB networks for under 50 kVA. Cert number 2 is the involvement of networks again for greater than 50 kVA. And this cert, which was introduced in 2016, cert number 3, is for all controlled or restricted works that do not require the involvement of the ESB networks. So if we use my example again of the car charger, the tails are okay, the earthing was fine, I was able to install it, the fuse board was all good, there was no faulty main switch fuses in the fuse board, so I continued on with my install. I see that the install itself is greater than 10 years old, so I can now, I've done my work, I've tested it, I can now issue the customer with a cert number 3, and I will also recommend that they get a periodic inspection report undertaken in the near future. Next, we have a sample of our test record sheet. Now, I can't praise the importance to registered contractors about this piece of paper here. The best way to describe it, this is the history of the install undertaken by the registered contractor. So he's outlining, first of all, if you, just on the top left-hand corner here, I know it's probably mightn't see it that well, but this is all the earthing arrangements on the property. So he's saying here that the supplementary, the earth electrode, and the main bonding are all in place. So he's confirmed those by carrying out his tests. Then if you just drop down where you see the black circuit details, so he puts in his circuits installed, and then he also includes some of the existing circuits that he tested. And if you can jump right over past where you see where the red box is, you can see here where he's carried out his tests on the existing RCDs, and he's noted that in the comment section. So again, this should be accommodating the cert number 3, and this shows that the contractor in this situation carried out his work in accordance with the guidelines and with the rule book on that. So again, commercial, industrial, agriculture and electrical installations, RECs working on installations in the category above shall issue a recommendation that a periodic inspection report shall be carried out in accordance with IS 10101, and it should be noted in the comment box again on the certificate that this recommendation has been issued. Again, this is to do with carrying out additional work in the likes of farms and schools and things like that. Again, referring to the health and safety guidelines there as well, very important on that. So the registered electrical contractors' duties and safe electric oversight. So our registered electrical contractors are required to comply with the listed requirements which have been introduced in the interest of safety and to assist the person responsible for the installation to be aware of the potential pre-existing faults in the existing circuits. Safe Electric will oversee the implementation of these requirements to ensure the full compliance. Again, going back to us analysing the certificates as they come into us in Safe Electric and also carrying out the inspections. This is a draft of a flow chart, just again to give guidance to the registered electrical contractors. So if we start at the very top, we've your installation. Again, we'll use the EV car charger because I think that's the most popular one at the moment. So installing my new car charger. So obviously the customer agrees to this work survey. If the customer doesn't agree to it, we'll say no, and we go right down to our red box here, do not install new circuit, and issue the customer with a notice of potential hazard. If the customer does agree to the the work survey, we can we go over to yes, and then we come back down here, and now we're going, carrying out the rules that I showed you earlier. So we're going checking the tails and the earthing and the bonding. And if all those are all good, we carry on down again, and we carry out our sample testing. And if all those are good again, we can continue and continue on. But if none of these are compliant, we're back over again to requesting the customer that this remedial work has to be undertaken. If the customer doesn't agree to undertake the remedial work, we're back down again to informing the registered contractor not to go ahead with the install and issue the customer with a notice of hazard. So that's pretty much what we're gauging on the flow chart. So it can be a slight bit of a juggling act for registered contractors in certain situations. But again, I'll just go back and I'll repeat myself with the rule where that the existing installation isn't impaired by the safety of the new install, and that the new install doesn't impair that of the safety. And I think we've been listening to that all morning anyway, even in regards to the building regulations. So that's it. Thank you very much. Thanks, Neely. Thank you.